Welcome to Crime Stories for Sleeping. I know your mind won't quiet. Your eyes fight to stay open. But tonight, let my voice carry you away. Somewhere in the dark, there's an unsolved mystery. A locked room, a missing witness, and the rain. Always the rain. Close your eyes now. The story begins. In 3, 2, 1. Story number 1, The Whispering Hollow. The rain had been falling for 7 days straight when Eleanor Voss arrived in Blackwater. The town clung to the edge of the map, a forgotten stitch in the fabric of the world, where the roads narrowed into dirt paths and the pines grew so thick they blotted out the sky. Her car, a dented sedan with a rattling exhaust, had given up halfway down the winding mountain pass, leaving her to trudge the last mile on foot. The hem of her coat dragged through the mud, heavy with rainwater, as she approached the only lit building on the street. A 2-story inn with a flickering neon sign that read, VAC NCY. The A long since burned out. The door creaked when she pushed it open. The air inside was thick with the scent of wood smoke and something older, something damp that curled at the edges of the wallpaper. A man stood behind the front desk, his face half shadowed by a green-shaded lamp. He didn't look up when she entered, just slid a ledger across the counter. His fingers were stained yellow at the tips, nicotine or something darker. Room for the night, Eleanor said. Her voice sounded strange here, too sharp against the silence. The man grunted, flipped the ledger around. Sign! She scrawled her name, the pen scratching like an insect's legs. When she straightened, she caught him staring at her throat. Not her face, not her hands, but the hollow where her pulse beat. His lips parted, revealing teeth filed to points. 3rd floor, he said. Mind the step. The staircase groaned under her weight. The walls were papered in a pattern of roses, their petals blackened with mildew. At the landing, a draft whispered through the cracks in the floorboards, carrying a voice so faint she almost mistook it for the wind. Eleanor! Asterisk. She froze. The voice came again, closer now, a breath against her ear. You shouldn't have come back. Asterisk. The room was smaller than she expected. A single bed, a wash basin crusted with rust, a window that rattled in its frame. The rain blurred the glass, turning the world outside into a smear of gray and green. She dropped her bag on the bed and the impact sent a cloud of dust swirling into the air. Something glinted beneath the pillow. Eleanor reached for it slowly. Cold metal met her fingertips, a locket tarnished with age. Its chain snapped clean through. She pried it open. Inside, a photograph of a woman with her face scratched out, and beneath it, a date, October 31st, 1987. The day her sister vanished. Downstairs, the innkeeper hummed a tune. It curled up through the floorboards, a sound like bones rubbing together. Eleanor pressed the locket to her chest, her breath coming fast. The voice in the wall sighed. Too late, it whispered. She's already here. Asterisk. The rain lashed against the window, 1,000 fingers tapping at the glass. Eleanor turned the locket over in her hands, the metal icy against her skin. The photograph was old, the edges curled and brittle, but the scratches over the woman's face were fresh. The paper beneath torn as if done in haste. A floorboard creaked behind her. Eleanor spun around, her heart hammering. The room was empty, the door still closed, but the air had shifted, grown heavier, as if something had exhaled against the back of her neck. She crossed to the window, her reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. Behind her, the shadows in the room seemed to stretch, pooling in the corners like spilled ink. The locket weighed in her palm, a silent accusation. Why had she come back? Blackwater had taken her sister 30 years ago. The police had searched, the townsfolk had whispered, but the woods had swallowed Claire whole, leaving nothing behind but a single shoe at the edge of the marsh. Eleanor had been 12 then, too young to understand that some places hunger, and some hungers are never satisfied. Now the town had called her back. A letter slipped under her apartment door, the paper damp and smelling of earth. She's waiting for you at the Hollow. Asterisk. No signature, no return address. just those 6 words written in a hand that matched the ledger downstairs. The innkeeper knew something. Eleanor tucked the locket into her pocket and moved to the door. The hallway beyond was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb at the far end. The floorboards groaned as she stepped out, the sound echoing like a warning. She made it 3 steps before the whispering started. It came from the walls, from the gaps between the floorboards, a chorus of voices too soft to make out, but too urgent to ignore. They tugged at her, pulling her toward the staircase, down to the first floor where the innkeeper's lamp still burned. The desk was empty when she reached it. The ledger lay open, her name staring up at her in smudged ink. The pages before it were filled with other names, some faded with age, others fresh. She recognized one near the top. Claire Voss, October 31st, 1987. Her sister had signed in the night she disappeared. A draft stirred the pages, flipping them forward. Names blurred past, hundreds of them, all written in the same cramped hand. The last page was blank except for a single entry at the top. Eleanor Voss, tonight. The lamp flickered, then went out. In the dark, the whispering grew louder, the voices resolving into a single word, repeated over and over. Run. Asterisk. But it was too late. The front door was locked, the key gone. The innkeeper stood at the foot of the stairs, his smile stretching too wide, his pointed teeth glinting in the dim light. Room for the night, he said, and this time, it wasn't a question. Behind him, the shadows moved. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the roof like a funeral march. Eleanor backed toward the staircase, her pulse a wild thing in her throat. The innkeeper advanced, his steps unnaturally silent, his eyes reflecting the faint glow of the exit sign. You shouldn't have come back, he said, echoing the voice from the walls. The locket burned in her pocket. She clutched it tighter, the metal biting into her palm. Claire had been here. Claire had signed. And now Eleanor was trapped in the same nightmare. The whispers surged around her, the voices of everyone who had ever checked into the hollow and never left. They filled her head, a cacophony of fear and regret, all urging her to do one thing: fight. Eleanor grabbed the ledger and hurled it at the innkeeper. The lamp toppled, oil spilling across the floor in a rush of flame. Fire licked up the walls, devouring the rose-patterned paper, the heat sending the shadows recoiling. The innkeeper screamed, a sound that wasn't human, and lunged for her. She dodged, bolting for the kitchen at the back of the inn. The door was locked, but the window above the sink was cracked open, just wide enough to squeeze through. Glass shattered as she climbed out, slicing her palms, but the pain was distant, drowned out by the roar of the fire behind her. She hit the ground running, the cold rain a shock against her skin. The woods loomed ahead, the pines swaying in the storm. Somewhere in there was the hollow, the place her sister had vanished, the place that was waiting for her. Eleanor ran. Behind her, the inn burned, the flames painting the rain red. And in the distance, beneath the howl of the wind, the whispers followed. She's already here. Asterisk. The trees closed around her, their branches clawing at her arms. The ground sloped downward, the earth turning to mud that sucked at her boots. The locket bounced against her chest, a pendulum counting down the seconds. A light flickered between the trees, a lantern swinging from a low branch. Beneath it stood a figure in a tattered dress, her back to Eleanor, her hair the same shade of auburn as Claire's. Eleanor's breath caught. The figure turned. The face was blank, featureless, the skin stretched smooth like a mannequin's. But the voice that came from it was her sister's, sweet and familiar. You found me. Asterisk. The locket sprang open in Eleanor's hand, the photograph inside now showing two faces, hers and Claire's, both scratched out. The figure reached for her, and the whispering stopped. Dawn broke over Blackwater, the rain finally ceasing. The inn was a charred husk, the embers still smoking. In the woods, the lantern lay extinguished in the mud, its glass shattered. The locket rested beside it, its chain broken, its face empty. And in the town below, the neon sign flickered once, then died. VAC NCY, asterisk, always room for one more. The hollows of Blackwood County. The radio crackled to life at exactly 3:07 a.m. Sheriff Ellis knew this because he'd been staring at the clock for 2 hours, watching the minute hand stick between the 6 and 7 like it was afraid to move. The voice that came through the speaker wasn't dispatch, wasn't human. "She's in the willows." The words dripped like wet paint down a windshield. Ellis's hand froze on the steering wheel. Outside, the rain fell in silver needles, turning Blackwood's main street into a funhouse mirror of flickering streetlights. He hadn't meant to be out tonight, hadn't meant to answer any calls. The anniversary of Claire Voss's disappearance always made the town restless, made the shadows between the trees shift when no one was looking. But when the radio spat static at 2 a.m. and the mayor's daughter didn't come home from her shift at the diner, duty dragged him from his bed like a fish hook in the gut. The willows. Everyone knew the stories. How the trees by Miller's Creek bent their branches low enough to brush the water. How they'd whisper secrets if you stood still long enough. How sometimes when the moon was right, they'd whisper back. Ellis's tires crunched over the gravel turnout. His headlights cut through the rain, illuminating the no trespassing sign nailed to a rotting post. The paint had peeled away to reveal older letters beneath. "Don't let her see you." The sheriff killed the engine. His breath fogged the windshield as he reached for his flashlight. The metal was ice cold, the batteries humming like wasps in a jar. Something moved between the trees. Not an animal, not the wind. This was deliberate, the slow, swaying gait of someone who knew the ground by heart. Ellis's thumb found a safety on his revolver. "Lena," his voice disappeared into the rain. "That you?" The flashlight beam caught a flash of denim, a white sneaker, laces untied. Then the face. Ellis's stomach turned to lead. Mayor's girl or not, that wasn't Lena standing in the willows. The thing wearing her skin smiled with too many teeth, its lips stretching like taffy. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once. From the trees, from the creek, from the radio still crackling in the squad car. "Sheriff!" It sighed. "You're late for supper." Asterisk. The flashlight hit the mud with a wet thud. Somewhere downstream, a church bell tolled for no church that existed. And in the hollows between the raindrops, the willows whispered their oldest secret. "We've been waiting." Asterisk. Ellis took a step back. His heels sank into something soft. He didn't need to look down to know what he'd find. The same thing every lost soul found in Blackwood County eventually. A single white sneaker, laces untied. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the leaves like 1,000 tiny footsteps. Ellis's breath came in ragged gas as he stumbled backward, his boots slipping in the mud. The thing that wasn't Lena took a step forward, its movements jerky and unnatural, like a marionette with tangled strings. The sheriff's hand found his revolver, but his fingers refused to close around the grip. They tingled, then went numb, the sensation crawling up his arm like frost spreading across a window pane. "You remember the rules, don't you?" The voice was Lena's, but the words weren't. They slithered from its mouth, dripping with something thick and dark. "No one leaves Blackwood. Not really." Asterisk. Ellis's back hit a tree. The bark bit into his skin through his shirt, sharp as teeth. The willows leaned in around him, their branches creaking like old floorboards. A memory surfaced, one he'd buried deep. 20 years ago, standing in this very spot, a different missing girl, a different pair of sneakers left behind. He'd been a deputy then, fresh-faced and eager, convinced he could save everyone. The thing wearing Lena's skin tilted its head. "You never found her, did you? Claire?" Asterisk. Ellis's throat tightened. He'd searched for weeks, combing every inch of these woods. But the willows kept their secrets, and the creek carried away the evidence. The thing smiled wider, its jaw unhinging like a snake's. "She's still here. They all are." Asterisk. The branches parted behind it, revealing a row of figures standing motionless among the trees. Ellis recognized them, every face that had ever disappeared from Blackwood County. Claire Voss, the Henderson boy, Old Man Miller's wife. Their eyes were dark hollows, their mouths sewn shut with what looked like willow twine. And at the end of the line, barely visible in the gloom, stood a figure in a deputy's uniform. Younger, clean-shaven, himself. Ellis's legs gave out. He slid down the tree trunk, the rough bark tearing at his clothes. The thing that wasn't Lena crouched before him, its breath smelling of damp earth and rotting leaves. "Time to join the watch, Sheriff." Asterisk. Its fingers, too long, too many, brushed his forehead. The world went quiet. The rain stopped midair, droplets hanging like crystal beads. The pain faded. The fear melted away. Ellis tried to speak, but his lips wouldn't move. He looked down at his hands and saw why. Willow twine, stitched through his skin, pulling him to his feet. Morning light filtered through the trees, painting the creek in gold. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and clean. At the gravel turnout, the squad car sat empty, the driver's door hanging open. A fresh "no trespassing" sign gleamed in the sun, its letters crisp and black. Down by the water's edge, a new willow sapling bent toward the current, its leaves whispering secrets to the wind. And in the mud nearby, barely visible beneath the ferns, lay a single sheriff's badge. Tarnished, forgotten, waiting.